I'm Selena Garza, and I'm doing my research on rape culture and whether students are willing to accept this or not. These are just some of the images of exhibiting rape culture, where the idea that what men fear most about going to prison is something that we deal with every day, just walking down the streets. And the blame that's put on victims of sexual assaults for their sexual assaults instead of putting it on the perpetrator of that sexual assault. Rape culture is a society or environment whose prevailing social attitudes have the effect of normalizing or trivializing sexual assault and abuse. Rape myths are erroneous, stereotypical, prejudicial beliefs about reasons of sexual assaults, rapists, and rape victims. And then rape myth acceptance would be accepting these beliefs as gospel truths. These are some of the rape myths that I've come across. I did several interviews with victims in cases, and these were all things that they were told about their own assaults, whether it be by police, their friends, their family, people they knew in the community, people that when their stories came out in the news, they were attacked online on social media and stuff like that. This is a chart for some of the research that I did. I did a survey to 169 students, and this is one of the questions that I asked. In order for someone to be taken seriously when they say they don't want to have sex, they must say no firmly and loudly. The responses, as you can see here, are all over the board, which means to me that it's not being properly taught. Because if this many people can be this varied in their answers, I don't feel that we're all teaching the same thing. Consent is something that is given, it's not something that is assumed, so there's no need for the removal of consent by saying no if there was no yes to begin with. And I feel like that's where we're getting confused. We're not teaching it properly. It's never okay to put someone in a situation where they either have to keep the night going and keep their date happy by saying yes, or ruin the night and end the night by saying no. And that's I don't think that we make that clear to people, like as far as discussing consent. That no one should ever have to even be put in that situation. If a person is willing to flirt and kiss their date, it's okay for their date to push things to the next level, is another thing that I asked. And although the responses aren't as strong on the one is strongly agree, and the 5 is strongly disagree. And even though the responses aren't as far on the strongly agree, they're still there. And in fact, there's even still some people that are confused, which is in the 3 that either agree, neither, or disagree. And then there's still some in the 2 and 1 over to the agree side. To me, the fact that there's even like an issue there where they don't understand that, it's too much. It's never okay to push things of a sexual nature, so that the idea that this many people would think that even might be okay, or not even know whether or not it's okay, is honestly mind-blowing. Usually it's only people who sleep around often or spend their time hanging out in bars that are raped. And again, here the numbers aren't as high. But in North Dakota, 37% of sexual assaults occurred in their home. So obviously it has nothing to do with the bar. These are people that were at home. And at least 327, 31% of the victims were under the age of 18 at the time of the assault. So obviously they could not be in bars either. It has nothing to do with that. My hope is to put this research together and bring it to middle and high schools, colleges, state's attorney's office, and police stations to try and break the cycle of victim blaming that keeps victims from coming forward. Far too many people come forward and are victimized a second time by the justice system when they tell their story and have to hear things like, well, what were you wearing? Did you provoke your attacker? Did you have too much to drink? And what will you do differently next time? As if a victim could prevent their own assault. followed oftentimes by prosecutors declining to file charges in their case, dismissing charges entirely after they've been filed, and then allowing the perpetrator to plead their charges down so they're not even considered a sex offender, or so they don't serve time in prison or time in jail or time on probation, and sometimes they get then maybe like 3 or 4 days that was before they went to court, time served. Many victims in these cases end up being robbed of justice, and it's, for me, it would be impossible to try to convince someone to come forward and say that, hey, you can come forward and your perpetrator is going to be put in jail and you'll never have to do this and you'll get justice and all of that, but it's simply not true. It's not true because of the society that we live in and the society that allows the victim blaming that goes on, which it makes it almost impossible to prosecute these cases. Sexual assault is the only crime where the victim is guilty until proven innocent. So many people believe that women and, well, I guess men too, but mainly women just make things up. They have sex and they regret it. So they make things up so that because they regret it afterwards. And this goes back to the, one of the graphs that were in there. If you don't try to push someone into having sex, they wouldn't regret it if they regretted it. I mean, if you were going to coerce someone in it, which I understand, like if you coerce someone into that and they didn't want to do it in the first place, of course they're going to regret it after. They were pushed into something. They had to make the choice whether to say no and ruin the night or say yes and it hurts themselves. Sexual assault false reporting is as likely as any other felony reporting, which is less than 2%. And instead of believing the victims like we tend to do in all other cases, like in robbery, burglary, assault, stabbing, like anything like that, our society as a whole has a tendency to blame the victims, demand proof, question their clothing choices, drinking habits, and past sexual habits. Instead, it is never the victim's fault that their attacker decided to attack them, as it wouldn't be for any other case. Consent is not something that we should be teaching in college with a couple clicks of a mouse, as we do here. If we started early, I don't believe that we would be in the place that we are now, and that's why I want to go to middle schools and high schools, and in order to teach this earlier, well, people are still open-minded, because it tends to shut down a little bit by this age. And that's it.
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Okay. So you gave a survey. How many people did you get?
169.
Are you gonna? When do you think you'll have the results?
I'm still working on that. I just learned how to use SPSS, and so I'm just figuring that out now, and this is all I have so far. But I will be taking a class in the summer that I think is going to help show me how to use it. So, yeah. Yep.
I'm just curious about the education in this area, like in high schools or middle school, or even colleges. I know that they make every effort to, educate students, but do you feel have looked into just to see how detailed the programs are?
Their programs are not, in my own opinion, their programs aren't detailed at all. We have a program here where we do an hour online and we click a mouse, and that's supposed to teach us about sexual assault and not to rape somebody that passed out in your house. Or, like, to me, that's not enough. I feel like we just did that to be able to check a box and say, oh, okay, we did it. But it's not something that the education on it's not something we take seriously. And I think that, especially up here, it's a little more taboo to talk about these things, and I don't think that a lot of parents would be okay with it being, obviously we're trying to teach abstinence in schools instead of sex ed. So I feel like even just the idea of talking about something like this to an entire school would be hard for a lot of parents to stomach, but I think it's necessary, and so that's what I'm going to push for. Mm-hmm.
So do you think a key is maybe to start with an understanding that instead of did they say no or how well they enforce it, that was there a yes? Or you
Yeah.
just assume no unless you
Most definitely, and that's exactly what I want to try to convey to all these people that they need this training, because we don't have anything that says, we don't even have anything in college that teaches anything about consent other than this hour training that we do one time in our freshman year for a transfer student, just one time, and this doesn't even go into detail about like consent. It just says like basically don't assault somebody who's staying at your house or fell asleep drunk or got drunk, you know, like just don't do that. But it doesn't go over the specific issues with consent. And if there's no consent is not implied. It's either a yes or it's not there. And then you don't need to say no because you didn't say yes.
But also, they don't have to be drunk. I mean, it happens either when people are drinking, so it's not just that people are drunk, it can happen anytime.
Most definitely, but the ones, what we learn on the computer has to do a lot with drinking, probably because of our binge drinking stats, but the stuff that we learn is about drinking.